They say you never forget the moment your family chooses someone else over you. I was standing on that stage in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, scanning the crowd for the two faces that mattered most. But all I found were two empty chairs and a phone buzzing with notifications that would shatter whatever was left of my heart. My name is Lily Carter, and this is the story of how I went from being the forgotten daughter to the woman who owned the roof over my parents' heads. The auditorium at Ohio State University was packed that warm May afternoon. Thousands of graduates filled the floor, our black gowns rustling like a murder of crows as we waited for our names to be called. I had worked 4 years for this moment, juggling a double major in computer science and business administration. Maintaining a 3.9 gigapascals while working 2 part-time jobs to cover expenses my parents said they couldn't afford. Not for me, anyway. When they called my name, I walked across that stage with my head held high, even though my eyes kept darting to those 2 empty seats in the section where my parents were supposed to be. I had sent them the tickets 3 months ago. I had called to confirm. I had texted reminders. My mother had assured me they would be there, that this was important, that they were proud of me. The lies tasted bitter even in memory. As I posed for the official photographer, my phone started vibrating in the small purse I had tucked under my gown. Once. Twice. 10 times. 20. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the ceremony, on the speeches about bright futures and limitless potential. But when I finally sat back down in my seat, I couldn't resist checking. The first notification was from my mother's Instagram account. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. There they were, my parents, dressed to the nines at what looked like the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. My mother wore a glittering silver dress I had never seen before, easily worth more than my entire semester's textbook budget. My father stood proud in a designer suit, his arm around my brother Brandon's shoulders. Brandon held a champagne flute aloft, his other arm wrapped around a blonde I didn't recognize. The caption made my stomach turn. So proud of our golden boy. Brandon just closed his biggest real estate deal yet. This is what real success looks like. Celebrating the Carter family's rising star in style. The second photo showed them at a roulette table, laughing. The third was a selfie of my mother with the caption, "Life is too short not to celebrate the wins that matter." The fourth was a video of Brandon giving a toast, thanking our parents for always believing in him, for always putting his dreams first, for showing him what unconditional support looks like. I sat there in my graduation gown, my diploma clutched so tightly in my hands that the edges crumpled, and I felt something inside me crack, not break, not shatter, crack. Like the first fault line in a dam that has held back an ocean of resentment for far too long. I didn't cry. I had cried too many times before, and my tears had changed nothing. Instead, I felt something new rising in my chest, something hot and sharp and clarifying. Anger, pure, righteous, empowering anger. Marcus found me after the ceremony ended. My boyfriend of 2 years took one look at my face and knew. He had seen this building for months, had been the one to hold me through countless phone calls where my parents canceled plans, forgot important dates, or casually mentioned another expensive gift they had bought for Brandon. He had been patient with my excuses, understanding when I defended them, supportive when I finally started to see the pattern for what it was. "They're in Vegas," I said flatly, showing him the photos. Brandon closed a deal. Real success, apparently. Not like graduating summa cum laude from a top-tier university or anything. Marcus's jaw clenched. He was usually the calm one, the rational one, the one who reminded me that anger solved nothing. But even his patience had limits. "Lily, this is unforgivable." "I know," I whispered. And for the first time, I really did know. This wasn't just disappointment. This wasn't just the usual favoritism. This was a clear, unambiguous statement of my value in their eyes, or lack thereof. We went to dinner that night with Marcus's family instead. His mother, a warm woman who had treated me like a daughter from the moment we met, had tears in her eyes as she toasted my achievement. His father, a retired engineer, asked intelligent questions about my job offer in Seattle and my plans for the future. His sister, a high school senior, looked at me with admiration and told me I was her role model. I smiled. I thanked them. I pretended the hole in my chest wasn't growing wider with every kind word, every genuine expression of pride. Because these people, who shared no blood with me, cared more about my accomplishments than the 2 people who had brought me into this world. That night, lying in bed in my tiny apartment, I didn't check to see if my parents had called. I knew they hadn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and started doing what I did best: research and planning. You see, I wasn't just a good student. I was exceptional with numbers, with patterns, with seeing opportunities that others missed. And over the past year, working as an intern at a financial consulting firm, I had learned something very interesting about my family's financial situation, something my parents didn't know I knew. My father, Robert Carter, owned a successful insurance agency. Or at least, it used to be successful. For the past 3 years, he had been making increasingly poor business decisions, investing in risky ventures that Brandon pitched to him, covering Brandon's failed business attempts, and generally hemorrhaging money to prop up my brother's delusions of entrepreneurial grandeur. The biggest real estate deal Brandon had just closed? I happened to know it was actually a small condo flip that barely broke even, but my parents had fronted the entire purchase price as a loan Brandon had no intention of repaying. The Carter family home, a beautiful colonial in a prestigious suburb of Columbus, was heavily mortgaged. I had discovered this by accident 6 months ago when my father had left some financial documents on the kitchen table during my last visit home. Being who I am, I had photographed them, just in case. Just in case of what? I hadn't known then. Now I knew. The next week passed in a blur. I started my new job at Tech Vision Solutions in Seattle, a rising tech company that had offered me a generous salary and stock options. I found a nice apartment in Capitol Hill. I bought furniture, set up utilities, began building my new life 2,000 miles away from the family that had made it clear I was an afterthought. My parents finally called on day 8. Not to apologize, but to explain. "Lily, sweetheart, you have to understand," my mother began, her voice having that placating tone I had heard 1,000 times before. "Brandon's deal was time-sensitive, we couldn't miss it, and we knew you would be fine. You're always fine. You're so independent, so capable. We didn't think you would mind." I minded so much that I could barely speak, but I let her continue. "Your father and I are so proud of you. Of course we are. We've always known you would succeed. But Brandon, he needs us more. He's not as naturally gifted as you are. He needs our support, our encouragement. You understand, don't you?" I understood perfectly. I understood that in their minds, I was the child who required no watering because I bloomed anyway, while Brandon was the wilting flower that demanded constant attention. It didn't matter that I had begged for that attention, that I had spent my childhood and adolescence performing academic and personal miracles trying to earn a fraction of the praise they heaped on Brandon for barely passing his classes. "I understand, Mom," I said quietly. "I understand everything now." She sighed with relief, missing the edge in my voice entirely. "I knew you would. You're such a good girl, Lily, so mature. Speaking of which, your father and I wanted to talk to you about something." "Here it comes," I thought. "We're in a bit of a financial bind," she continued, and I could hear my father coaching her in the background. "The agency has had a slow year, and we made some investments that didn't pan out. The bank is being absolutely unreasonable about the mortgage. We're behind on payments and they're threatening foreclosure." My heart should have broken. A week ago, it would have, but that crack had widened into a chasm, and something new had grown in the space where my unconditional love used to live. "How much?" I asked. "Well, we're about 6 months behind, so with penalties and fees, it's around $87,000. We know it's a lot, but you're making such good money now, and if you could just help us out this once, we would pay you back. Of course we would. We're family." Family. That word again. The word they used as a weapon when they needed something, but forgot entirely when I needed them. "Let me think about it," I said. "I just started this job. I need to see where I stand financially." "Of course, sweetheart, but please hurry. We don't have much time." I hung up and immediately called Marcus. He had stayed in Ohio to finish his own degree, a master's in business administration, but we talked every night. "They want $87,000. I told him. "Of course they do," he said, and I could hear the anger he was trying to suppress. "What did you tell them?" "That I would think about it." I paused, then added, "Marcus, I need you to do something for me. I need you to look into something." I told him my plan. It was audacious. It was probably petty. It was absolutely the most satisfying idea I had ever had. "Are you sure?" he asked when I finished. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied. Marcus had connections through his program, including a real estate attorney who owed him a favor. Within 3 days, we had all the information we needed. The house was worth approximately $650,000 in the current market. My parents owed $520,000 on the mortgage, and with the late fees and foreclosure proceedings starting, the bank was motivated to sell quickly rather than go through the lengthy foreclosure process. Through a shell company Marcus helped me set up, keeping my name carefully hidden, I made an offer to the bank, $530,000, cash, contingent on a rapid close. The bank accepted within 24 hours. My parents had no idea. They thought they still had weeks to come up with the money, to pressure me, to guilt me into saving them. Instead, they received a letter from the bank informing them that their mortgage had been sold to a new entity, and they now had 30 days to vacate the property or negotiate a rental agreement with the new owner. I can still remember the phone call. My father's voice, usually so commanding and sure, shook with panic. "Lily, something terrible has happened. Some investment company bought our mortgage from the bank. They're kicking us out. We need that money now, not next month. We need it immediately. Can you wire it today? Investment company? I asked innocently. What's their name? Something called Horizon Property Holdings. We've never heard of them. They won't return our calls. Lily, please, we're going to lose the house. Everything we've built, everything your grandparents left us. We're going to be homeless. That's terrible, Dad, I said, my voice steady. Have you asked Brandon for help? He just closed that big deal, didn't he? There was a long pause. Brandon's money is tied up in his next project. He can't access it right now. Lily, you're our daughter. We need you. Funny how I became their daughter when they needed something. I'll see what I can do, I lied. Let me make some calls. Instead, I booked a flight to Columbus. It was time for the second act of this performance. Marcus picked me up from the airport. During the drive to my parents' house, the house I had grown up in, the house that now belonged to me, he kept glancing at me with concern. You don't have to do this, he said. You could just let the property management company handle everything. You never have to see them again if you don't want to. I want to, I said firmly. They need to see my face when they find out. They need to know exactly who they dismissed, who they underestimated, who they treated as an afterthought. We arrived at the house in the late afternoon. The for sale sign that had briefly appeared on the lawn had been removed, replaced by a simple sold rider. I used the key the title company had given me and walked into my childhood home as its owner for the first time. Nothing had changed and everything had changed. The same furniture, the same family photos on the walls, the same faint smell of my mother's favorite candles. But now it was mine. Every stick of furniture, every dish in the cabinets, every family heirloom, mine, because it came with the house and the sale. My parents weren't home, but Brandon was. I found him in the living room, sprawled on the couch with his laptop, probably pretending to work on his next big scheme. He looked up when I walked in, surprised. Lily? What are you doing here? I thought you were in Seattle. I was, I said pleasantly. I came back to take care of some business. Where are Mom and Dad? At the bank, trying to figure out this foreclosure nightmare. Some company bought the mortgage, and now they're being total hardasses about it. He shook his head. It's messed up. This is our family home. These corporate vultures have no respect. Interesting perspective, I said, sitting down across from him. Marcus stood by the doorway, silent but present. Tell me, Brandon, how much did you contribute to the mortgage over the years? He blinked, confused by the question. What do you mean? I mean, you've lived here rent-free for the past 6 years. You're 28 years old. You've had several business ventures, some of which Mom and Dad funded entirely. So how much have you paid toward the household expenses? Rough estimate. His face flushed. I don't see how that's relevant. We're family. Family helps each other. Family helps each other, I repeated slowly. That's interesting. Was it helpful when Mom and Dad skipped my graduation to celebrate your mediocre condo flip in Vegas? That wasn't mediocre. He started defensively, then caught himself. Look, I'm sorry about that, okay? They should have been there. But you have to understand. They were excited. I haven't had a lot of wins lately. And I've had too many? I asked. Is that it? I've succeeded too much, so my achievements don't count? They're just expected? Brandon shifted uncomfortably. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. You've always been the smart one, Lily. The one who didn't need help. Mom and Dad knew you would be fine no matter what. But me? I need their support. I need to know they believe in me. At my expense, I said quietly. Your confidence was built on my neglect. Your successes celebrated while mine were ignored. Do you know that Mom forgot my birthday 3 years in a row? But she threw you a $10,000 party for your 25th. I didn't know that, he said, but his eyes slid away from mine. Yes, you did. You've always known, Brandon. You just didn't care, because it benefited you. The front door opened, and I heard my parents' voices, tense and worried. They were arguing about which relatives they could borrow money from, whose pride they would have to swallow to ask for help. They stopped dead when they saw me sitting in their living room. Lily! My mother's face transformed from worry to relief to desperate hope in an instant. Thank God you're here. Did you bring the money? Did you get our messages? I did, I said, standing up slowly. I got all of your messages, every single one. My father stepped forward. Then you know how urgent this is. We need to wire the payment today. The new owner is being completely unreasonable. They want the full amount or they want us out. Can you imagine? Kicking a family out of their own home? Their own home, I repeated. Dad, whose name is on the deed? He frowned, confused by the question. Mine. It's been in my name since we bought it 30 years ago. Why? Not anymore, I said quietly. As of 5 days ago, the deed is in the name of Horizon Property Holdings, which means it's not your home. It's not your house. It hasn't been for almost a week. My mother's face went pale. What are you talking about? The bank can't just sell the house without telling us. We have rights. You do have rights, I agreed. The right to be notified, which you were. The right to negotiate a rental agreement, which I'm here to discuss. But ownership? You lost that when you defaulted on your mortgage. Who are you to lecture us about this? My father's voice rose, his face reddening. We're your parents. We're going through a crisis. The least you could do is show some respect and some sympathy instead of standing there like some kind of financial expert telling us what we already know. You're right, I said, my voice deadly calm. I'm not just standing here like some kind of financial expert. I'm standing here as the owner of this house. Horizon Property Holdings isn't some faceless corporation, Dad. It's my company. I bought your mortgage. I own this house. Every room, every closet, every single shingle on the roof belongs to me. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother actually swayed on her feet, and my father had to steady her. Brandon's laptop slid off his lap onto the floor, but he didn't notice. That's not possible, my father finally whispered. You couldn't have. You don't have that kind of money. Don't I? I asked. You just asked me for $87,000 like it was pocket change. The house cost $530,000. I had a signing bonus, stock options that vested early, and some very good investment returns. Plus, I've been saving aggressively for years because I knew I would never be able to count on family support. Turns out, living below your means and investing wisely pays off. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How could you do this? To your own family? We raised you. We loved you. Loved me. The laugh that came out of me was harsh. You loved me so much that you missed my graduation for Brandon's Vegas party. You loved me so much that you forgot my birthday 3 years running. You loved me so much that every achievement I earned was met with, "That's nice, dear," while Brandon got parades for mediocrity. That's not love, Mom. That's tolerance. That's keeping me around as a backup plan for when Brandon inevitably failed and you needed someone to bail you out. That's not true, she protested weakly. Isn't it? Then tell me, when was the last time you asked about my life? About my job? About Marcus? When was the last time you told me you were proud of me without following it up with, "But you've always been so capable"? When was the last time I felt like I mattered to you as much as Brandon does? She couldn't answer. Neither could my father. Brandon stood up, his face stricken. Lily, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't realize. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But you didn't. Because it was easier not to. Because their favoritism benefited you. Because you're not actually the helpless child they pretend you are. You're a grown man who let his parents enable his failures and neglect his sister because it was comfortable. I pulled out a folder from my bag and set it on the coffee table. This is a rental agreement. You can stay in this house, which is now legally mine, under the following terms. First, you will pay me $2,500 per month in rent, which is below market value but not free. Second, you will treat this house with respect, as the property of someone else. That means no major changes without my approval, no damage, and adherence to any rules I set. Third, and this is the most important one, you will treat me with respect. Not as a backup plan, not as a reliable source of money, not as the capable one who doesn't need attention. As your daughter, as an equal to Brandon. If I hear one more comment about how his achievements are a real success or how I'm just naturally good at things, this agreement is void, and you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. My father's face had gone from red to purple. You can't be serious. You're going to charge your own parents' rent? In our own home? My home, I corrected. And yes, I am. Consider it a life lesson in consequences. You gambled with your financial security to fund Brandon's dreams. You neglected one child to coddle another. You took for granted that I would always be there to catch you when you fell. Now you get to learn what it feels like to depend on the mercy of someone you underestimated. This is cruel, my mother sobbed. This is vindictive. This isn't the daughter we raised. You're right, I said, and for the first time, my voice softened slightly. The daughter you raised would have given you the money. She would have drained her savings to save you. She would have set herself on fire to keep you warm and then apologized for not burning brighter. But that daughter died on a stage in Ohio, holding a diploma you couldn't be bothered to watch her receive. I'm what's left, and I'm done being your safety net while you ignore me until you need something. I picked up the folder and handed it to my father. You have 48 hours to decide. Sign the agreement, or I'll begin formal eviction proceedings. Either way, I'm flying back to Seattle tomorrow night. Marcus will handle the local details if you choose to stay. I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm. Please, Lily, please don't do this. We're sorry. We'll do better. We'll change. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then met her eyes. You've had 26 years to change, Mom. You've had countless chances to see me, really see me, and choose to do better. You didn't, so forgive me if I don't believe that you'll suddenly transform now that I'm the one with the power. I gently removed her hand and walked toward the door. Marcus followed, but I paused at the threshold and turned back one last time. If you sign the agreement and actually follow through, if you genuinely try to build a better relationship, then maybe we can find our way to something resembling a healthy family. But that's going to take time, effort, and real change from you. Not from me. I've spent my whole life trying to earn your love and attention. I'm done performing. From now on, you come to me as I am, or you don't come at all. We left them standing there, 3 people who suddenly realized that the person they had dismissed was the only thing standing between them and complete financial ruin. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room, my phone buzzing with messages, some from my parents, some from extended family members who had heard some version of the story. Most of the messages were predictable. How could I be so heartless? Didn't I understand that family forgives? Wasn't I being dramatic over one missed graduation? One missed graduation. As if that was all it was. As if it wasn't the culmination of a lifetime of being second choice, of being the reliable one, the capable one, the one who didn't need anything. But there were other messages too. From my mother's sister, my Aunt Rachel, who had apparently been on the receiving end of my parents' behavior herself over the years. From my high school guidance counselor, who remembered how hard I had worked and how little recognition I had received at home. From my college roommate, who had witnessed my parents cancel visits or show up hours late too many times to count. "I'm proud of you," Aunt Rachel wrote. "Your mother has always taken advantage of people's love. It's about time someone taught her that love without respect is worthless." Marcus and I spent the day walking around Columbus, visiting places from my childhood. The park where I used to read books because home was always about Brandon's activities. The library where I had studied for hours. The coffee shop where I had worked during high school, saving money because I knew I couldn't count on help with college. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked as we sat on a bench overlooking the river. "Buying the house?" I shook my head. "No, maybe I should, but I don't. They had the chance to be there for me when it mattered. They chose not to. Now they get to live with that choice. Literally." He squeezed my hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're the strongest person I know." That evening, my father called. His voice was different, subdued. "We'll sign the agreement. We don't have another choice, do we?" "You always have a choice, Dad," I said. "You could choose to see this as an opportunity to rebuild our relationship on honest terms, or you could choose to see it as a punishment. But either way, those are the terms." "Why did you really do this?" he asked quietly. "Was it just revenge?" I thought about it for a long moment. No, it wasn't revenge. Or not only revenge, it was about drawing a line. It was about saying that I matter, that my feelings matter. That you can't treat someone as disposable and then expect them to save you when you need it. It was about teaching you a lesson that somehow, after 26 years, you still hadn't learned. That I am not the forgettable one. I am not the one whose achievements are just expected. I am not the safety net you can ignore until you need to catch you. I am a person, your daughter, and I deserve better than what you've given me. There was a long silence. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "You're right. You do deserve better. I don't know when we stopped seeing you, Lily. I don't know when Brandon became the only child who mattered. But you're right." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to enough. But it was something. "The agreement is on the table," I said. "Ball's in your court, Dad." I flew back to Seattle the next day. Marcus stayed behind to handle the paperwork, which my parents signed within the 48-hour deadline. They would pay rent. They would follow the rules. And according to Marcus, when he showed up to collect the first month's payment and the signed agreement, my mother had asked if I would be willing to have dinner with them the next time I was in town. Not to apologize or explain. Marcus told me over the phone. She specifically said she wanted to listen. To hear about your life. To get to know who you are now, not who she assumed you were. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her I would ask you, no promises." She said that was fair. 3 months later, I flew back to Columbus for Thanksgiving. Not to stay with my parents, but to have dinner with them at a neutral restaurant. It was awkward. There were long silences. Brandon was there too, looking uncomfortable in a way I had never seen from him before. But they tried. My mother asked about my work, and she listened to the answer instead of immediately pivoting to Brandon's latest project. My father asked about Marcus, about our plans for the future, about whether I was happy in Seattle. Brandon apologized, really apologized, for years of taking them for granted and not speaking up when he should have. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to healed, but it was a start. Over the next year, things slowly changed. My parents paid their rent on time every month. They called me occasionally, and the calls weren't always about needing something. My mother remembered my birthday. My father sent me an article about a tech innovation he thought I would find interesting, just because. Brandon started paying rent too, contributing to the household expenses for the first time in his adult life. He got a steady job in sales instead of chasing the next big entrepreneurial dream. We started texting occasionally, carefully rebuilding something that resembled a sibling relationship. The house became a reminder for all of them. Every time they paid rent to their daughter, every time they had to ask permission to make a change, every time they wanted to complain but remembered the terms of the agreement, they were forced to confront what they had done. Not what I had done to them, but what they had done to create this situation. A year and a half after I bought the house, I flew home for Christmas. For the first time since high school, I actually wanted to be there. We had dinner together, and my mother gave me a present, carefully wrapped. Inside was a photo album she had made, filled with pictures of me throughout the years. My school plays, my academic awards, my graduation photos from high school and college, achievements she had been present for but never really celebrated. On the first page, she had written a note in her careful handwriting. "I'm sorry I didn't see you when I should have. I'm sorry I took you for granted. I'm sorry I missed so much. I can't give you back those years, but I promise to see you now. I love you, Lily. Not because you're capable or independent or successful, but because you're my daughter, and you always deserved better than what I gave you. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." I cried, reading that. Marcus, sitting next to me, held my hand while my mother watched with tears in her own eyes. "It's a start," I said quietly. "It's a good start." She nodded, unable to speak. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the kitchen of my house, the house where I grew up, the house I now owned. It looked different somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. It wasn't a monument to my neglect anymore. It was becoming something else, a place where hard lessons were learned. A place where a family was slowly, painfully figuring out how to value all of its members. Marcus came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "How do you feel?" "Hopeful," I said, surprising myself. "I actually feel hopeful." "That's good," he murmured. "You deserve to feel hopeful. You deserve everything good." I turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Did you ever think, when you met me, that this is where we would end up? With me as my parents' landlord?" He laughed softly. "No, but I always knew you were capable of incredible things. This is just one more thing on a very long list." The following spring, my parents asked if they could buy the house back. They had been saving aggressively, cutting expenses, and Brandon had contributed a significant amount from his job. They had the down payment for a mortgage they could actually afford. I could have said yes. I could have taken the money and walked away. But something stopped me. "Why do you want to buy it back?" I asked my father during a video call. He was quiet for a moment. "I thought that was obvious. It's our family home." "It is," I agreed. "But it's been your family home for the past 2 years with me as the owner. What changes if you buy it back?" "We wouldn't owe you rent anymore. We wouldn't have to answer to you about repairs or changes. We would be independent again." "Independent," I repeated. "Is that what you miss? Being able to make decisions without considering how they affect me?" "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "Then what did you mean, Dad?" Another silence. Then, slowly, "I suppose I miss the feeling of being the one in charge, of being the patriarch, of not having to be reminded every month that I failed." "There it is," I said gently. "You want to buy the house back so you can forget the lesson, so you can go back to the way things were." "No," he protested. "We've changed. We're different now." "You have," I acknowledged. "You really have. But the question is, will you stay different if the reminder goes away? If you don't have to sign a rent check to me every month? If you don't have to think about the consequences of taking someone for granted?" He didn't answer, but I could see the realization dawning on his face. "I'll make you a deal," I said. "In 5 years, if things between us are still good, if you've maintained this new dynamic, if you've continued to treat me as an equal to Brandon, then we can talk about you buying the house back. But not before, because this house has become more than just property. It's become accountability, and I don't think any of us are ready to let go of that yet." My father looked at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "You're right. You're absolutely right. 5 years." 5 years, I confirmed. "Now, it's been 3 years since I bought that house. 3 years since I stood on a graduation stage and realized my family had chosen to celebrate my brother in Vegas instead of celebrating me. 3 years since that crack in my heart widened and let the light in. I'm not going to pretend it's been perfect. There have been arguments. There have been setbacks. There was a period where my father slipped back into old habits, and I had to remind him firmly about the terms of our agreement. There was a month where my mother forgot to call me back for 3 weeks straight, and I had to decide whether that was worth addressing or just human forgetfulness. There was the time Brandon got promoted at work, and my father's first instinct was to throw him a big party, until my mother quietly reminded him that they hadn't celebrated my last promotion at all. But the difference is, they catch themselves now. They notice. They apologize. They try. Marcus and I got engaged last year. When I told my parents, my mother cried, and this time they were tears of joy instead of manipulation. My father shook Marcus's hand and thanked him for loving me. Brandon offered to help plan the bachelor party and actually followed through. When we started discussing wedding plans, my mother asked tentatively if she could be involved. Not take over, not dictate, but be involved. Help choose flowers, go dress shopping, share in the excitement. I missed so much of your life, she said quietly over coffee one Saturday. I know I can't get those years back, but I don't want to miss any more. If you'll let me be part of this, I promise to respect your choices. This is your day. Yours and Marcus's. I just want to be there for it. Really there. We went dress shopping the next week. She held my hand when I found the one, and she didn't try to convince me to choose something different, something more traditional, something that fit her vision instead of mine. She just smiled and said, "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Marcus is a lucky man." It was such a small thing, but it meant everything. The wedding is next month. We're having it in Seattle, at a venue overlooking the water. My parents are flying out, staying at a hotel nearby. Brandon is coming too, with his girlfriend, a kind woman named Jessica who doesn't take his nonsense and whom I actually like. Aunt Rachel is officiating. Marcus's family is handling most of the planning because they're local and because they've been more family to me than my own for years. But my parents are trying. That's what matters. Last week my father called me, not because he needed something, not because there was a problem with the house, but just to talk. I was going through some old photos, he said. I found pictures from when you were little. You were always smiling in them, always excited about something. A book you read, a project you made, you got on a test. And I realized, somewhere along the way, that smile got smaller. You stopped showing us your achievements because we stopped celebrating them. You stopped asking us to come to your events because we stopped showing up, and by the time you graduated college, you weren't smiling at all. Dad, I started, but he continued. Let me finish. I need to say this. You asked me once why Brandon became the only child who mattered, and I didn't have an answer. But I've thought about it a lot over these past 3 years. I think it was because you were easier. You didn't need us to rescue you, or fix your problems, or prop up your ego. You just did the work and succeeded, and somewhere in my stupid brain, I decided that meant you didn't need us at all. That Brandon needed us more, so he deserved more of our attention. I did need you, I said quietly. I needed you so much. I just needed you differently than Brandon did. I know that now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I know that now, and I'm sorry it took losing my house to my own daughter to figure it out. But I want you to know something, Lily. When you walk down that aisle next month, I'm going to be there. Not in Vegas, not at some business meeting, not anywhere else in the world. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be proud, and everyone in that venue is going to know that you're my daughter and that you're extraordinary. I cried. I sat in my office in Seattle, looking out at the skyline, and I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Thank you, Dad, I whispered. That's all I ever wanted. I know, sweetheart. I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to give it to you. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. From that graduation stage where I felt invisible, to the day I signed the papers making me the owner of my childhood home, to this moment where my father finally saw me, it had been painful. It had been messy. It had required me to be harder than I wanted to be, more ruthless than felt comfortable. But it had also been necessary. I thought about all the people over the years who had told me to just forgive and forget, to be the bigger person, to understand that my parents were doing their best, and maybe they were doing their best. But their best had been slowly eroding my sense of self-worth, teaching me that my value was in my utility, that love was conditional on not needing too much. By buying that house, by establishing those boundaries, by refusing to be the eternal safety net, I had forced a reckoning, not just for them, but for myself. I had to confront the fact that I had been complicit in my own neglect by always being available, always understanding, always accommodating. The therapist I started seeing after that graduation day had helped me understand something crucial. She said, "You can't change other people. You can only change yourself and your boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop enabling someone's bad behavior, even if it causes them pain." That's what the house represented, not revenge, though I won't pretend that satisfaction wasn't part of it, but primarily, it represented a boundary. A line in the sand that said, "This is how much I'm willing to tolerate. This is what I require to have you in my life. You can meet me here, or you can step back." They had chosen to meet me. It had taken time, and it hadn't been smooth, but they had chosen to do the work. Not everyone does. I know that. I have friends who have set similar boundaries with toxic family members, and those family members chose pride or stubbornness, or their own narratives over doing the work to repair the relationship. Those friends have had to make peace with estrangement, with holidays spent with chosen family instead of blood family, with the grief of losing people who are still alive. I'm lucky. My family chose to change, but I also created the conditions that made change necessary. I didn't just ask them to be better. I showed them the consequences of not being better, and I made those consequences impossible to ignore. The house sits as a reminder. Every month, on the 1st, my father transfers the rent payment to my account. It's automatic now, set up through his bank, but he still sends me a text to confirm it went through. Sometimes he adds a joke. Sometimes he asks about my week. Sometimes it's just rent paid. Love you. Those 2 words, love you, used to feel empty. Now they feel earned, not by me, but by him. He's earning the right to say them by showing up, by being present, by treating me like I matter. My mother has started a journal, she told me a few months ago. In it, she writes down things about my life, things I tell her, things she wants to remember. She said she realized she couldn't remember basic facts about me, like my favorite food or what kind of books I like to read or what I wanted to do in 5 years. So she's building that knowledge now, deliberately, carefully. Brandon has become something like an actual brother. We text regularly. He asks for advice sometimes, about work or relationships, and he actually listens to my responses. He's stopped expecting our parents to fund his dreams and started building them himself. Last month, he sent me a check for $2,000. What's this for? I asked when I called him. Partial payment, he said. For all the times Mom and Dad spent money on me that should have been split fairly. I did the math, Lily. Over the years, they spent probably $100,000 more on me than on you. I can't pay it all back right now, but I can start. Consider it back rent for all the years I lived at home without contributing. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. Let me do this. I need to do this. I need to be someone you can be proud to call your brother. So, I accepted. Not because I needed the money, but because I understood what it represented. Accountability, acknowledgement, an attempt to balance scales that had been tipped unfairly for far too long. These days, when I visit Columbus, I stay at the house. In my old room, which my parents have kept exactly as I left it, unlike Brandon's room, which has been converted into a guest room. It's a small thing, but it matters. It says, you still have a place here. You always had a place here, even when we failed to show you that. We have family dinners now, real ones, where everyone contributes to the conversation, where my accomplishments are celebrated alongside Brandon's, where my mother asks about Marcus's dissertation and my father wants to know about the project I'm leading at work, where Brandon talks about his girlfriend and asks if I think she would like my friend Sarah, because he wants our lives to intersect, wants to build bridges that never existed before. It's not perfect. Some wounds run too deep to fully heal. There are moments when I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to slip back into old patterns, for Brandon to need something and suddenly become the center of attention again. There are days when I resent having to be the one who drew the line, who had to become the landlord of my own childhood home to be seen by my own parents. But there are also moments of unexpected joy. Like when my mother called me just to tell me she was thinking about me. Like when my father sent me a clipping of my college graduation announcement that he had saved, with a note that said, I should have been there. I'm sorry I wasn't. But I'm here now. Like when Brandon texts me a meme he thinks I'll find funny, no ulterior motive, just wanting to make me laugh. These moments don't erase the past. They don't make up for the graduation they missed, or the birthdays they forgot, or the years of feeling invisible, but they build something new. A different kind of family. One based on mutual respect and effort rather than blind obligation. Marcus tells me I'm braver than I think I am. He says most people wouldn't have had the strength to do what I did, to stand up to their family so completely, to risk losing them entirely in the hope of building something better. I don't know if it's bravery or desperation or just sheer stubbornness, but I know that I'm happier now than I was 3 years ago. I know that I no longer feel like the invisible daughter, the backup plan, the one who doesn't need anything. I know that when my parents say they're proud of me, I believe them. And I know that the woman who stood on that stage, clutching a crumpled diploma while her parents celebrated her brother in Vegas, would be proud of the woman I've become. The woman who refused to accept crumbs when she deserved a feast. The woman who bought her childhood home and used it as leverage for love and respect. The woman who drew boundaries and held them firm, even when it hurt. That woman, that version of me from 3 years ago, was breaking. Now, I'm whole. Not undamaged, but whole. And that's worth everything. Next month, I'll walk down the aisle toward Marcus, toward the life we're building together. My father will walk beside me, and this time, he won't miss it for anything in the world. My mother will cry in the front row, tears of joy, and perhaps some lingering regret. Brandon will stand with Marcus's groomsmen, finally taking his place as my brother, not my rival for parental affection. And somewhere in my purse, I'll carry the deed to a house in Columbus, Ohio. Not because I need to wave it in their faces, not because I want to remind them of their failures, but because it represents something bigger than revenge or even justice. It represents the moment I decided I was worth fighting for. The moment I decided that being loved meant being seen, valued, respected. The moment I stopped setting myself on fire to keep others warm. They wanted to define success? They wanted to determine what achievements mattered? Fine. But now they live in my definition of success. They pay rent in the house of hard truths. They wake up every day in the monument to the daughter they underestimated. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, they're learning what they should have known all along. I am not the backup plan. I am not the easy one who doesn't need attention. I am not the safety net they can ignore until they need to be caught. I am Lily Carter. I am brilliant and capable and deserving. I am someone who rebuilt herself from the ashes of neglect and emerged stronger, clearer, more certain of her worth. And I am the landlord of my own childhood home, which is perhaps the most perfect metaphor for my life that I could have asked for. They don't own me anymore. I own my story. I own my value. I own my future. And yes, I own their house too. That's not revenge. That's justice. That's poetry. That's the most expensive lesson in respect and love that money can buy. And every single dollar was worth it.